items on the agenda. First item is the Family First Community Center update. Kelly?
Thank you, Council President Prince and council members. I'm Kelly Beamer, the Community Services Administrator. Super excited to come to you today to give you a briefing. We haven't been in front of council for a little while for the Family First Community Center, so we're making incredible strides for this project, and so I'm super excited, like I said, to bring our team, our project team forward. I'd like to introduce, to start with, Russ Woodruff, if you could stand, please. Russ is our project manager from Milestone Management Group. Then we also have Rich Wagner and Meredith Everest from Bayless Architects. They're here as well that will be presenting. So we're getting, I don't want to steal their thunder, we're getting really close to schematic design, and it's exciting to see what the facility is looking like. As you know, we are now close to, well, we are over $10 million in donations from funding and funding from donations and sponsorships. So we're definitely moving down the road towards our final goal of $15 million. Also, as you are aware of, Council approved Benson Cascade Community Plan. Within that, in this area, a community center is one of the top priorities that have been identified in this area. So we're, again, excited that this is going to help the community through this project. With our partners, as you know, is City of Renton, Renton School District, Doug Baldwin, and Health Point, which will be providing medical services and social services in that building as well. So with that, I'd like to stop talking and get the program turned over. We'll start with Russ Woodruff.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here this evening. I would like to set the stage a little bit and tell you what we've accomplished to date and where we're headed. As you probably know, we have engaged Bayless Architects as our project architects. We went through a pretty competitive process to do that. We went out, we solicited proposals from firms, but when it came down to looking at the proposals and looking at not only at the experience of the firms, but the qualifications of the folks who were going to be involved, Bayless by far rose to the top in terms of their ability to take on a project with health and fitness component, with a major health component, health and healthcare, as well as being able to design flexible spaces, which will be essential to the school district's STEM program. So Bayless is on board. Once they were selected, we began with a series of meetings with our partners, with HealthPoint, with Mr. Baldwin, as well as the school district. And those meetings were both individual to hear what they were looking for and what their thoughts were, what their hopes were for the program, as well as common meetings of the whole, if you will, so that we can talk about how those partners will work together in that building. That has been distilled by Bayless, and they're the folks who have the thunder this evening and are going to give you sort of a snapshot of what that looks like visually, as well as the program. So we've done that. We have commenced with some of the on-site work. We engaged a surveyor. We have a site survey. We did a geotechnical soil boring. That has been completed. And we are also, at this point, working with a traffic and parking engineer, because that's something that we know that's critical. We have to make sure that this new facility works with the existing facilities. And they have gone out and they have done observations. Now we're going to meet with the individual partners and talk about their program and how many people and when. So that is also ongoing. As you'll see this evening, Bayless has been working on the design. They are nearing completion of what we call the first major phase of design, which is schematic. We are also going to be engaging a construction cost estimator who will now estimate that schematic design and tell us where we are, because the marching orders that I have been given is the budget is the budget. And we are going to do our best to make sure that we stay within that. So we will estimate schematic design, we will see if we are on target, and if we need to make adjustments. The next phase will be design development. We're going to do exactly the same thing. We will, at the completion of design development, we will do construction cost estimating. Again, compare, contrast, make sure that we're on target. And then lastly, we will, when Bayless moves into the construction documents, we will probably do another estimate somewhere around 60 to 70% of the construction documents, again, to make sure that we are hitting that target. Once those are complete, we will competitively bid to contractors, and that's probably the first part of 2019. And our hope is that we will be under construction by the end of that first quarter of 2019, beginning of the second quarter, something like that, with probably a 10 to 12-month construction window. So that's where we are in a nutshell. And I know that as we go forward, you may very well have questions. Please bring them forward to myself, to our architects, because we want to make sure that you folks are informed and have a good sense of where we're headed. With that, I will turn it over to Bayless. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. It's a pleasure to keep working with you. My name is Rich Wagner. I'm Senior Principal at Bayless Architects. I brought a few things that I wanted to let you know. I'm thinking they were in support of why we got hired. There's a couple images here that we've been working in public buildings, semi-public buildings for years. We've been doing community centers for probably 45 years. Oh, and before I forget, if you have questions along the way, happy to take those. And at the end of our presentation, we have a packet that we can leave with each of you. Done a lot of public work. This is certainly within the realm of what we're looking at here. This is a training facility, counseling offices for Youth Eastside Services. This was a real fun project we got a chance to work on. This was about a $60 million water park that was enclosed. Unfortunately, the $60 million made it that it was not built. But it was a great project to be a part of. See, I go to full screen here. I know all of you know, but for those that are in the online tonight, maybe they aren't familiar with it. The Cascade Benson area is shown here. It's a larger area that we'll be working in. It was identified in the annex. I wanted to highlight this area at this scale. Our site is actually right here where the hand is. But the area itself has really struggled demographically. 63% of the students at Cascade are on the lunch program. And probably even more importantly, 21%, tied for first place in the school district of the students are, 21% is the mobility rate. And that has to do with the number of students that don't finish a year. Clearly an area of great need. Zooming in a little bit to the school, 116th is here. Way north up here is the Cascade Shopping Center. Petrovitsky's way to the south. The school is existing. Parking is all along the front. We've been working with the school district, and this piece of property right here is what will be available for our new center. The site plan, I'm going to zoom in now to just this area. You'll be able to look at it from the street. This is 116th, again, north is up. Existing schools here. Our facility will nestle in here. One of the things that we know of, and Russ hinted at, is parking is in high demand. And it's not just parking during the school day, but one of the things the school district identified is the fields, the play fields that are way back here, are used on the weekends intensively. So that's why we also looked at not only adding parking here in the front, but also adding parking in the rear. In terms of the placement of the building, we wanted to make sure it was easily visible from 116th, so we pulled it as far to the street as we could, with still preserving as much parking. This is all new parking here, this will be new parking here, but we know that this area right here, which is already being used by the school district for mom and dads and aunts and uncles drop-off, that's going to be an important space, and we'll want to keep that going. preliminary floor plan. I'm going to zoom in now to just this area here. And this is really where our program comes home. The main entrance will be over here. Street is looking to the west this way. The main entrance will be a 2-story space, and the lobby here will be a 2-story space. The main feature of our design is this spline, this gallery, which will be available for all kinds of exhibits, which we want to really build upon. And the gallery will run all the way to the main gym. Off of this gallery, this main spline, we're going to have administrative offices here, education meeting rooms here. The school district is going to do a makerspace here. And if you get a chance to visit a makerspace, they're really pretty awesome. I think in my generation we called them shops, but it's just a real different trade now. Health Point will nestle in here. And then this is where our exercise really begins. We've got toilet rooms, locker rooms here, dance studio, Zumba studio here. Across the hall, the exercise equipment, and then into the main gym. Now the gym has been sized a little bigger than what you might see at McKnight Junior High. The reason it's a little bigger is we want to do a walking, running track all the way around it. Now, it's not very big. You have to do 14 laps to get a mile, but I think it's still there, and it's not just exercise running. It's likely mom pushing the stroller many, many mornings. So we want to capture that. In this area here, I kind of passed over it, apologies. This will be a drop-in childcare, young middle school age, and then this will be a teen room here. A bit of caution, this is not going to be providing daycare. We're not a daycare facility. This is strictly, if you want to come bring a workout, bring your child or your children, they'll be taken care of here while you enjoy your workout. The courts here are big enough for a full court. We're going to have bleachers that will expand into it, not many, but enough for a small scrim. And there'll be a curtain that divides the space into badminton, pickleball, cross court here to here. Excuse me. And then in total, we're right now at about 27,000 gross square feet. We're still massaging that. We've got a couple areas we think we can pull a little bit out, and we want to get those out before we take it out to pricing. So this is kind of how the whole facility will function. Form often follows function, so Meredith's going to walk you through the exteriors.
Okay. Great. So yes, as Rich described, as the program starts to take shape, then we start studying how the building will come together in 3 dimensions. And so that's what I'll talk about a little bit today. And as we started to study that, a couple of things stood out as being key elements. One of those was being making sure that the new building is sensitive to the scale of the neighborhood. The neighborhood has single-family residential buildings, so they're smaller scale, 1-story, 2-story. So that was something that we considered very carefully. And the next thing that we discussed in some of the early programming was sustainability. And so approaching the building in a very sustainable manner was very, very key to all of the different team members. So as we got into it, there's what we call biophilic design. And essentially that is design that focuses on aspects of the natural world that contribute to human health and productivity. So this being a building about health and wellness, biophilic design was something we leaned on very greatly in the study of the exterior. And essentially, biophilic design, it supports our innate connection between human biology and nature. And there has been evidence that biophilic design reduces stress, enhances creativity and clarity of thought, improves well-being, and expedites healing. So obviously those are very key for this building. Architecturally, this is exhibited with biomorphic forms and patterns, contours, textures, and even numerical arrangements that persist in nature. And certainly we know naturally we enjoy being outdoors, we like those connections. So the images that we have here, these both help to illustrate that biophilic design concept, as well as starts to show some of the materials that we have in mind for the building. So you see in the top left and the top right hand, those are examples of green roofs. So these are very drawing upon biophilic design, where you, from the inside out and from the outside in, you see nature. And they also, both of these incorporate curvaceous forms, very organic shapes. Also in the middle, top middle, you see glulam elements, kind of a curved glulam beam. Also in the bottom right-hand corner, another image of glulam beams. A couple of the images focus on being able to see nature. Even though you're indoors, you see nature through the glazings. You see a couple of images there. Solar panels is something that we're interested in exploring, so you see that in the right-hand side image. We're also looking at maybe a dark metal window frame system, which is illustrated. And again, focusing on curvilinear shapes, abstract patterns, and organic forms. So this is a view from the south, or looking at the southwest corner of the building. We really wanted to focus on creating a welcoming and very inviting, almost a beacon toward the school and the neighborhood. So that's what you see here. And again, as I mentioned, having a scale that's very sensitive to the neighborhood. So that's why the building is low at the front, but with a very prominent entry element. And you start to see in this the hint of a green roof on the curved element. And we want the green roof to be seen by the people, by the students, the people using the building, by the community. And the green roof, what that is we're proposing they call an extensive green roof. So this is about 3 to 5 inches thick. It's a low maintenance, low cost, no irrigation, and it's a proven system. It's used quite frequently in the Northwest and in the world, really. Some of the benefits are that it retains heat in the winter, protects from solar gain in the summer, improves stormwater management, and supports natural habitat and biodiversity. So not only is it, again, kind of emphasizing that biophilic design, it also becomes a tool to the neighborhood that announces this is a sustainable building, this is a healthy building. And you also start to see in this image the hint of a curve, and we'll see a little bit more about that in a moment, but kind of this organic roof line really starts to soften the building, as well as, again, being sensitive to the mass, not making it too large for the community. So this is a view looking at the northwest, toward the northwest. And from the street, the pedestrian is about 5 feet higher than the entry level of the building. So you really do, that green roof is really, really prominent. It really does speak to a visitor and the people driving by. Again, you start to see the green roof and also the strong axis that Rich pointed out. That's the area where we're envisioning solar panels could be on top of that area. And we see that glazing as something that can be very special. It's an opportunity to, it could be clear, it could be a combination of clear and translucent. We could start to introduce colors in that area. And even maybe colors that are unique to this community, something that really speaks to the community. But it is definitely something that we see will cast some really beautiful light inside that gallery and make that a very dynamic and interesting space. So we see this building really as an architectural tool to, with elements that can educate the community and really inform the community. And so that's the overview. I think I'll leave it on that image, and Kelly will wrap up.
Does council have any questions before I do the quick wrap up?
Any questions from council?
I have one.
Caroline?
So is it expected that the gym area would be used for larger events as well? Because the layout seems very broken up, and I didn't see, other than the dance studio and the gym, any large areas where you can have larger assemblies. Is that a space that would accommodate that? Or is it not meant to have those like we have at the other community center?
We have, and we can, if you, Meredith, or we can go back to the floor plan. There are larger meeting rooms that can be used for community, which is up in the front where Rich is pointing to right now. So probably 30-ish people to be able to assemble in there. And the gym, although we won't be, the plan is not to purchase tables and chairs and all those kind of things for events. The gym will be able to accommodate that, and we've spoken with Doug as well as the school district. If there's events that they coordinate or Doug does separately as the operator, we can rent tables and chairs for that and pass on to the group, so.
No commercial kitchen.
Right.
Any other questions from council?
Actually, I did have one more. Sorry.
Please.
Were there any plans to build anything outside of the facility, park-wise or outdoor activity-wise, or is it just going to be limited to the inside space?
So there is, it's not depicted in here, but community garden area where Rich is pointing to that point. There is not what you call a commercial kitchen, but there will be a demonstration kitchen, so that will help with teaching the community different ways to prepare food or healthy foods, those kind of things, and then the community garden will kind of tie into that. There's also a mobile port, if you will, that we've nestled out for, the architects have for a mobile dental clinic, potentially a clothing bank to be able to come back and forth in. The school district is extremely excited about that opportunity, so and then food, if we're delivering food and those kind of things. So that will have that access point for that as well. We'll also be, again, coordinating with the school district because of the field that's on the east side of the facility, as well as they have one on the northeast corner, so we can coordinate events with them. When the agreement is, obviously, the Family First Community Center is definitely focused on kids, but it is families as well. So during the school year, kids will be in school, so the coordination of events and things will be after school. And then conversely, then in the summertime, we'll be able to do programming all the time through there and weekends as well. So those kind of operational programs will be coordinated as we move forward.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Go ahead, Ryan.
If we can go back one more slide to the one of the baseball. You mentioned there was quite a bit of ball field usage. Looking at the satellite image on maps right now, it looks like that baseball field is cut into a little bit. Is that baseball field lost when we're talking about the weekend use, or is it just minimized in size?
So working with the school district, again, I wanted to make sure that, we weren't encroaching in on that. The school district, it's quite a large area and it's hard to tell on this photo here. But there's plenty of room for that field use to continue. Now during construction, we'll have to do some coordination on with the CVAC group. School district is already in conversations with them to be able to coordinate on different fields during construction. Then we'll be able to come back to this field as well. So, and also currently the field that you see to the north is not as programmed currently as the south field is. So there's options for them to utilize that field as well during construction. Trying to lessen the impacts if we can.
Any other questions from council? Right. Kelly, do you?
So just wanted to follow up with a couple next steps. I think the team had addressed this already, but we are in the process of going through the parking and traffic study. So working with all three of the partners, with the school district, with Health Point, and with Mr. Baldwin. So we'll be looking at all the different operations and how that we'll be able to mitigate that. And then the architects, Bayless, will be going through the land use pre-application process here shortly, as well as he mentioned pulling in the design team, the rest of the design team coming in as well. So that's where we're headed. We would probably estimate coming back to council, unless you would like it sooner, probably in another 3-ish months, I would think, when we get some of these other studies done, so we have some more to report to council.
Right. Yes, Ruth.
When the community will have opportunity to have an input?
The public? Yes, once we get to the point where we've got some, like the geotech all completed, which it is, but we're incorporating that in, some of these plans a little bit more into full schematic, so then we can have, it will be public, we will be meeting with the public and giving them what we'll be doing, providing it as far as the facility itself, and they'll be giving input on types of programs and things like that that they would like to see in the facility. And Doug has also committed to meeting with them, the public, a couple times, the community, since this will be not a regional facility, but more for the Benson Cascade area. So definitely wants to hear what they want for, as far as programming to provide within the building, so that we're meeting their needs.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, are we identifying any areas where we might have concessions, like coffee or snacks or anything for sale?
The team actually talked about that the last meeting and currently, because we do have a demonstration kitchen, so, and then a break room, but for the public will probably be similar to what the Renton Community Center has, would be some vending machines with healthy food
Okay.
options. That's currently what the intent is at this time.
Any other questions? All right, if not,
Nice.
we are going to move on.
Okay?
Thank you,
That's great.
Thank you.
Kelly. Next up, CAC recommendation deliberation. And I believe all of you received a memo from me this past Friday on some potential next steps, including doing a statistically valid survey of our residents to find out how they feel about this. And I am going to let Kelly and Jan do their presentation and then open it up for all of you all to discuss. Jan, are you up first?
No, Kelly is actually.
Okay.
In the presentation up now.
Okay. Thank you, Council President Prince, council members. Again, Kelly Beamer, Community Services Administrator, joined with Jan Hahn, our why do I always miss that?
It doesn't matter.
Administrative Services Administrator. Sorry about that. So what we'd like to do is give you a brief overview. Council had full presentation along with the full report last Monday on your Community Advisory Committee. The recommendation that came forward, pretty extensive report, as well as a very thorough presentation that our Chair, Tim Searing, and Vice Chair, Bob Reeder, presented to Council at that time. So I'm not going to go through every item on that, but I am going to just kind of give a real high level on the park side, and then Jan will be providing the funding portion as well. So to remind Council what the task was for, and I'm sorry, yes. So Karen Reed, our consultant, is also joining us. So she worked through the entire process with the group, so I want to make sure and recognize her, that if we have specific questions, that she's here to answer those as well. So what the group was tasked with was to review from our strategic plans, which was Parks, Recreation, and Natural Areas Plan, the recently adopted Civic Core Plan, and then the Bikes and Trails Master Plan. The new one is not adopted, but we are still working through where they were at currently, plus the original adopted plan. So the Citizens Advisory Committee had those to review, and all of the projects that were listed within those plans. So the Community Advisory Committee, which we'll call the CAC moving forward, started a prioritization process. We looked at all of the, again, all of the projects that were in those plans and whittled that down to 73 projects that what we're calling viable. So whether they were, so they weren't like in wetlands, there was land currently available, those kind of things. So we weren't evaluating or asking them to evaluate the world. We had kind of a finite amount. So they went through and did a prioritization through literally a ballot type process where they all individually reviewed all the plans and prioritized them individually, and then we came back together, reviewed that, and then they moved it, asked the staff then at that point for us to do our evaluation on the projects as well. So we went through that process. And then we brought it back to the CAC together and discussed all of the plans together and why staff would prioritize some things differently than what the CAC did. There was quite a few actually that were that matched, which was really good to see. The overriding theme through that whole process was that the CAC, as well as staff, looked at what council's directive has been through the whole time, but also internally what they felt was to take care of what we have. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our major maintenance. So we went through and did all the evaluation, which you have in your packet, all the individual projects. We won't go through that now, but then they came forward with the full recommendation. Through that recommendation, the group came up with funding the 43 major maintenance projects that are listed in our current 6-year capital plan, and then added 11 new or expanded projects throughout the city, which we tried to, the group as well as the staff, tried to look at some geographic equity as best we could with what we had available for properties that we could develop. And then we were surprised. We thought that the list would come to your directive. We had a $70 million threshold, and we thought, wow, we're going to be way over that with all their projects. They did such a fantastic job. They came in the first round at 68.5 million with all these projects listed, and the group, the CAC, felt that at that point to put in a 1.5 million contingency fund to address anything as, you know, if there's inflation, it wouldn't address all of it, but at least to put something in reserves towards that to get to the $70 million. And those construction costs are estimated in the 2018 dollars. And I will turn over to Jan.
Thank you, Kelly. This slide represents a slide that we presented to the Citizens Advisory Committee during their prioritization process. It represents a hypothetical spending of a 25-cent levy over a 20-year period with, like I said, 25-cent levy lift, where we start spending a little bit slow in those early years, but then we increase it as time goes on. And the reason we showed it that way is just because we know that a lot of those projects are not currently shovel-ready. So this gives us a little time while we get those projects shovel-ready. And then in years 2022 to 2026, we can start spending a little bit more money out of that levy to make a bigger impact toward implementing some of those identified projects. At this level, and funding some of those projects, and in large part during those 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th years, we actually are able to expedite a few of them so that we minimize the impact of inflation over just stretching them out over all the 20-year period. The beauty of a simple levy lid lift is that we can fund both the capital levy of the 25 cents plus a 2 to 4 cent M&O levy, which would help sustain those projects that we're implementing. And we can do it with one simple ballot measure. And that makes it a lot less confusing for the voters. And some of the capital levy could be used to issue 9-year bonds. And this would also help us to expedite some of these projects. Again, because we know that if we wait till year 20 to do some of these projects, there's going to be a lot of inflation risk associated with that. So those costs are going to go up. As Kelly noted, they're 2018 dollars. The bonds could be tailored to meet the project expenditure timeline. And so we just, we need to know once we have identified, if council decides to move forward, Kelly would map out when we would implement those projects as they get them shovel ready, and then we would determine the most ideal financing mechanism. Again, this is just a hypothetical of what it could look like. There's countless scenarios that we could depict. And so we just need to identify when we're going to spend those funds, and then we can work the financing tool around that. This is a timeline that simply illustrates that should the council want to put this on the November ballot, you can do that. You can meet that timeline. We'd simply have to have the information to King County by August 7th, which means you would have to act by August 6th or before. That gives you time between now and then to deliberate and decide what you want to do. This is a slide you have seen before. It is the budget that we presented back in 2017 to council in support of the Parks, Trails, and Community Facilities Initiative. Council modified the budget back in 2017 to reflect these costs, and then the cost that we didn't spend, the dollars we didn't spend in 2017, were included as a budget carry forward with the first quarter budget amendment this year. So you do have these dollars available for this purpose. As you will note, there is money for community outreach, there is money for polling, there's money for the cost associated with the community task force, there's funds available for community outreach, and then there's election cost that the council already appropriated. At the end of the day, the election may cost us a bit more than that, but we know now that we have not quite spent some of the Citizens Advisory Committee material money that we thought that in support of that effort. So we could end up within budget at the end of the day. And so with that, I will just open it up for questions of Kelly or Karen or any of us, and council can.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr.
The
Corbett.
first one, I just would like some clarity. The levy lid lift proposal, does that require a 60% or a?
No, the
That's a 50.
levy lid lift is a
majority.
50% plus one voter,
Okay,
simple majority.
okay, good. Thanks.
Any other questions from council?
I have a question.
Please.
What is the timeline on the polling?
The polling, I believe we would, if council says move forward with that, we would do that, I think, in the next couple of weeks.
Fairly quickly.
Yeah, I can answer. Yeah, sure. So we have a tentative timeline. The initial questionnaire drafting would begin immediately. Data collection would occur June 21 to the 26th, with top-line results by late June and presentation in the beginning of July.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Go ahead, Ryan.
Just a quick question. While I'm very excited about the 43 major maintenance projects, I think I feel like we heard that a few times. Is there something built into this to make sure that we're not going to end up in a scenario where we have that backlog in the future? I just want to make sure that, the investments we're making are ones that we're not going to put on a future council, have to go back to the voter and say, we need to fund these. And I recognize it was a relatively small portion of the total, but, and I totally agree on its need, but I just want to make sure we can pay for what we're building.
Yes, so we did discuss that with the group. So depending on what council chooses to fund, building in the M&O cost, which is the increased maintenance and operations, if you were to choose to fund only the current 6-year capital backlog where we're at right now for the major maintenance, we would be able to maintain those are existing infrastructure. So we're not building anything new, we're just repairing it, or replacing it. So that would make actually less maintenance over the time frame. And so if we continue with our current REIT funding through the next years, and then we would address the new items that would come on as far as major maintenance. The only caveat to that, which we did talk to the group about, is the unforeseen emergency type things that would come up, like the Riverview Bridge, for instance, something like that, we're not, anticipating to have something like that happen. So in an emergency situation, that would be the only caveat to that.
Go ahead, Don.
How many acres of property are you planning to acquire if this bond issue is put on?
We currently, if I remember the projects, have no acreage to acquire, unless part of the Tri-Park Master Plan, which would be over by the dog park. There's some, I believe, grant funding that we would have to pay back if that were part of the projects. But currently, all the projects that are on there have, that's part of the viability of them, is we didn't have to identify property.
Go ahead.
I misunderstand then, because I thought part of the plan was to acquire the Merlino property.
Actually, the CAC Group was part of the Tri-Park Master Plan. The full blowout of that is the Merlino property. The CAC Group was very direct to say that that portion would not be funded. They were not recommending that be funded through this process, that just what we call phase one of the Tri-Park, like I mentioned, for the narco site, which we currently have.
So there's absolutely would be any parkland acquisitions or trail acquisition property in this $70 million.
I would have to look at the list again, but I believe we had the one of, what we had was a new park up in the East Plateau area. City owns that property currently. Unless something comes up that we're not planning for, like a potential May Creek connection, but it's not identified through this specific initiative.
Okay, so I guess, I don't know how the council is assured that is in the future. I mean, you never talked for a different council,
Yeah.
I understand that, but as this goes down. And then I understand there was talk about covering the pool or adding an indoor pool.
Part of what the Cedar River Park, through the Parks, Recreation, Natural Areas Plan, identified in there is an expansion or renovation of the facility. As far as the details to that plan, we would have to go out and master plan it, which is back to what Jan was talking about, the shovel-ready project. So we would master plan what that looks like, as well as community input. So whether or not it's covered, we add, 5 more slides, we, do those kind of things to it. The detail is not in the strategic plan for that respect.
Well, I guess my concern in that is that I'm on the council, going in my 19th year, and was here when we passed to build the pool. And the council has been consistently told every time somebody wanted to put a cover over a pool that was the wrong thing to do because of the cost of, not the cost so much of doing it, but the cost of maintaining it and getting the people to run it. So that you would be adding, if you do that to the pool, you'd be adding a tremendous amount of operating cost. And from I'm just going through the information, going through that booklet that I got, and those are the things that I got the impression were included in the $70 million. So that is a big concern because staff for 18 years that I've been here because people wanted to cover the old Henry Moses pool, is staff said, no, don't do that because it's too expensive and it's not economically viable. So,
Again, if I could.
Go ahead,
Council
Kelly.
President, so you're correct in that respect. Again, the items that were forwarded through the recommendation, there was, options of things that could happen. Again, we would have to master plan it, and we would look at those maintenance costs if there was ever the option to put a roof over the pool or, expanding a park in a certain direction or adding certain types. All of those things would have to be master planned out for the 11 larger projects.
Any other questions from council? Go ahead, Ruth.
It's not exactly a question. I do have a lot of concerns, and I highly appreciate all the work that has been done so far, but I don't feel comfortable at this time with information that I have to be able to feel that I'm making an informed decision. I will be more comfortable after receive the information of the poll and see what the people want, but again, I checked the list of recommendations, and I still think that if we're going to be 100% transparent with the public and we're going to tell them this is what we're going to use the money for, we need to be fully disclosure about what are they voting for and how much they're going to have to pay for. And when I see that we're using the average house
Medium house.
medium house, I would rather to see a table like when we did it with the RFI, that this is the cost of my house and this is how much I'm going to be able to pay. I don't want to sound transit 3 here that people are going to think they're going to pay something and then the result is going to be different. So as much transparent as we can be, especially in the projects that are being proposed. I understand why they made that decision, but I still struggle with some of those projects. And again, new things when we're struggling to maintain what we have is one of my biggest concerns.
And if I could as well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
The committee did, as I had mentioned, the main priority for them, for all of them, was to take care of what we currently have, is the major maintenance. That was number one, if anything else, to make sure that that was taken care of. And obviously, council's option to what projects, if any, get funded moving forward, but I think Council President Prince is going to address that.
And so, Ruth, one of the reasons why I'm not here here's the committee report, let's all agree on this tonight, is that I too want to see what the results of the statistically valid survey is, and I think that will inform what we want to do more than just tonight going, oh, this sounds good, let's do it. You know, I really want to we're asking the residents to make a really big decision. It seems like asking them how they feel about this is appropriate. And so that's one of the reasons why there's no committee report here with me tonight asking for a recommendation. And since if we plan to do the November ballot, which we've not decided yet, we have till August 6th. This will be back in front of us again before August 6th, just so that we can kind of make a decision on what it is we want to do. Go ahead, Don.
Well, my concern is the amount of money that we're going to spend on when you take the polling and the balloting and all this stuff. You know, it's a little bit. If you read the newspaper and the business section at all, the average house in Renton is not $378,000. It's over it's around 500. So those are the kinds of things that you have to be sure that are there. And I guess I go back to what I've always said: we have to take care of what we have. We can't add. And I would be all for it if there wasn't anything new in this. That means if you came up with a list and said, for instance, I'll use Coulon Park because I think we know we need 1.5 million to do that. If that's, and this is what we're going to do. And if you look at the McKinstry report and you look at the pictures and all the things that they point out within the city, park-wise, that need to be repaired and updated without adding extra fields, adding AstroTurf, and all this stuff. They're saying that today's, for all our facilities, it's close to $52 million that we need over 30 years. This doesn't address any of that, very, very, very little of that. So my concern is that anything that goes forward, and even if you do the polling, which I'm against, because I think this is the wrong time to be spending that kind of money. We just got our tax values, and that's all. Every time I walk around my community, they're saying, wow, my taxes are going up. You know, people are telling me they've had $100,000 increase in value, and they equate that to that. And how many people have you talked to personally? I know I've talked a lot, saying, I don't know if we can afford to live in Renton anymore, but with tax increases. I just think we need to find a way to take a harder look and find out exactly what our true maintenance costs are to get built up before we go to put a bond issue on, or even go polling. I don't know what you're going to poll. If the council hasn't decided what projects are going to be on specifically on the bond issue, how can you tell them this is where we're going to spend your money? This is it sounds good, but this doesn't, I just don't think this takes care of the maintenance, all the maintenance. And if we can't keep up with the maintenance of the people, of the things that we have today, how can we continue to keep the up maintenance if we add things to this? This has a lot of added things to it. And they're all nice, but I think there's a little bit of voter fatigue. There sure on my part of every time I turn around, somebody's hitting me for more tax dollars. And we joke, and I'm not crying poverty, I want to be sure everybody knows that. But we joke, and we're looking seriously at a 55 and over community in Spokane because the cost of living in our house is going up really quickly. And, it's the STT, it's the tabs, the things. I got a little house worth $218,000 as a rental. The tax is going up. And every time you say, well, it's only this. Well, our poor renter today, when he heard that his tax assessed value went up on he's concerned that we're going to raise his rent and he'll lose his house. So I just don't think it's a time to put something on the ballot. And if we're working under a real tight timeline to get it there, I don't feel like the information is there. If you want to come in and say, okay, this is what needs to be repaired, this was going to be cost, most likely would be bite the bullet. But when you come in and say, well, we're going to make this, we're going to build this, or we're going to build that, then I personally am against it. I'm sorry.
So a couple things. One, last year we approved the money to do polling. We also empowered the CAC to come up with a package and bring it back to us. Part of the polling is to find out if it's the right time to do this package or do nothing. So I think that since the council already approved the polling money last year, going forward and finding out if it's the right time to do this is prudent. I understand where you're coming from. Trust me, I do. But I think that saying we approve that, we have a package that we had folks work months on at our direction. Let's find out what the voters think about this. And if it's not the right time, it's not the right time. That's fine. But I'd rather find out instead of us surmising, have someone who is responsible and professional at doing these types of things come back and give us the information.
Well, I surely don't need to poll my neighborhood from everybody I've talked to. And my issue is if you're going to put a polling on, we got to know what the package is.
We do, Don.
Yeah, we know what has been recommended, but is that what's going to go on the ballot? And I, for one, have been very outspoken about this, that we need to take care of what we have without adding anything. And there's no way you can look at these packages that's come forth that there is an addition.
And so,
that's just my personal opinion. So you're going to go out to the public and say, okay, here's the plan, and I just, plus it still comes back. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like we approved something 2 years ago, and then if it comes to fruition today, it's always said, well, we approved that last year, so therefore we just need to do it. I think we need to take a look at yes, we did approve it, but we need to say, is what we're going to give to the public when we do the polling, is that what we really feel we can afford? Is it what they can afford? So that's just my opinion.
Mr. President?
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, there's there's a lot there, and I appreciate Mr. Person bringing all that up. And I think we do well as a council if we can find a consensus to go forward on. I think it's worth spending a little bit of time to try and address some of his concerns. Certainly, the one about us getting new assessments. In fact, it makes me realize it would be, I think, useful for the council to kind of know when we receive assessments that our property's gone up yet another 15 or 20%. I'm curious I can't even do the math, and I've been on council a long time, to know what that's actually going to turn into in terms of an actual tax payment. I know that it's not, my actual taxes are not going to go up 20% because there's a 1% cap on the city overall, what we can do, but then it's different rules for library and fire and other authorities, so I couldn't remember. So we ought to know that, though, because I think Mr. Person's comment that as everybody's kind of just assuming that their taxes are going up another 20% because of their assessment, we ought to get to the bottom of that so that they at least have an understanding of what their taxes are going to look like. But then the other thing I wanted to just address is I thought that so if we do go out polling, there needs to be a context to this. I've already seen an input that there's some disappointment that there's not more in Benson Hill, and I tend to agree that ultimately we need to buy some property there for a park in that neighborhood. But I also thought that, well, maybe this is a reasonable compromise for what we're trying to do now.
The southeastern edge of Benson Hill, because if you
Southeast.
look at, there's Cascade Park, there's
Well-
Tiffany Park, so you're talking about the other Renton portion of Benson
Yeah,
Hill.
yes.
Not,
Thank you for that clarification.
I just want, because
Yeah,
there
'cause-
are 2 or 3 other parks in the Benson Hill.
And those, thank you for that clarification. And those, we are actually doing some improvements, right, in the package. Okay, but I was going to say that I thought maybe for this package, the ground rule, if I understood it, or at least the way the committee put it forward, was to not do any new acquisitions, which adds a lot of certainty when you go to the voters and you say, here's the things we're going to do for you. If you don't have to acquire property as part of it, it's a lot easier to kind of deliver on the promise of what we're asking people to vote for. In the greater context, I personally would still hope that during the 20 years that we're paying these bond issues and doing these, we'll do these improvements in the first 6 or 8 years and then be enjoying them and we'll be paying them off. I'd still hope that during that time we're trying to make strategic land acquisitions when we can and trying to plug the holes elsewhere. But each of those we'd have to come up with our own little plan for how to deal with it. Back on my end of town, I'd still love to see the May Creek Trail completed. That's not in this package either, but there's some more land acquisition. So I was thinking, okay, well that falls into the same category. But so if we get to what it would take to kind of get to a consensus, I think when we go to polling, we should make sure that the voters understand the context, that this is a huge shot in the arm to get us back to where we want to be with our park maintenance, to make sure that the parks that are really valued by this community continue to endure. It helps us realize the value of a huge purchase we made 20 years ago with the Narco property, so we could actually get some play field, so we're actually able to do something with that. I'm respectful of Don's questions about the pool, and it seems like if vetting that a little bit more would give him more confidence in figuring out, what exactly we're thinking as a council we might do. I'm okay having that discussion. And then, but I think in the end, when this goes to voters, I think it would need to be described as, this. Well, for the poll, I want it to be scientific. I guess what I'm hoping is that, in spite of the fact that it is yet another expense item, and I have taxpayer fatigue just as much as Don, I think, and just as much as everybody. But one of the things, and I mentioned it last week, is that it seems like every tax measure we're either paying for new transit stations in Bellevue or new trails in
Issaquah?
Redmond or Issaquah,
we're paying for, the Woodland Park Zoo, or, and all these things that the voters in Renton are paying for. Not to mention, this community's been incredibly generous, paying hundreds of millions to rebuild all our schools. But this is something that those of us that are adults in this community could actually go and use right here in our community. So for the amount of money, it's at least keeping the money at home. And we just know that the way that the world turns, King County will be back soon asking for another parks levy.
Next year.
Next
Next year, without any guarantee that there'll be any projects or any money that will have any direct impact.
Right.
To Renton.
And there's a significant part of our population that will say, well, parks are important. It's getting expensive, but I want to fund parks. And so that'll be another funding measure that might not apply here. So, anyways, that's my thought. But I would love to see us reach a consensus. I don't know if just talking about the pool or maybe giving Don a chance to think of other elements that he'd like to have vetted. I've always had great respect for his financial acumen in the past, and so I don't know, Don, if there's some way to get to a meeting of the minds.
And don't,
Go ahead, Ruth.
President. That's what I wanted to express, some of my concerns as well. But first, I want to know who is doing the polling. Do we know?
So the city's received a proposal from EMC Research. They're based in Seattle. They got offices across the country, but they've well known for doing this type of polling for cities across the Seattle region.
Okay. Well, when we talk about parks and we talk how important they are for the city, and I agree with your sentiment, Councilmember Corman. Normally, when you said, well, I want a park, you want a walking distance park, or I want to invest on what I can use daily, This is what I'm asking, the same thing in the same tone that you're saying it. I just ask to be transparent, to tell people this is what you're going to invest on. Probably you're not going to have a park that is a walking distance from your house. If you live in the southeast Talbot and southeast Benson Hill, you're not going to get that. So, but you're going to be investing for these other things. And if people is willing to vote for that, is willing to invest for that, that is what I'm expecting. Right. What I don't want is to support something where they later in life will find out that no, that's not what I'm paying for. And how much I'm paying, I want them to know that this is how they are paying.
And Ruth, I completely agree with you. I don't think any of us up here want to not be transparent. And I think that, even though I don't live in the other Renton, I live in the other part of the other Renton, I do understand. If there was some property there that we had, I'm certain that the CAC would have looked at it and said, let's do something there. And so, go ahead, Kelly.
Sorry, I just wanted to address that southeast portion I think you're talking about in the Benson area. We did address it during the CAC. We do have the Cleveland and Richardson properties down in that area. Those two properties are mostly wetlands, and we did commit, the group and staff, that there's projects that were called, I think, no specific sites or no specific areas, like dog parks, soft surface trails, community gardens. Those types of facilities were recommended to be in those types of areas where we couldn't fully develop a full park with playgrounds and things like that, but we would put amenities in those areas.
And if I can continue, this is the contradiction of the whole thing, because at the same time we're saying we should keep just the money to maintain what we have, and we should not be making more, acquiring more, because we don't have the way to support it. So for me, this is the contradiction. We need money to maintain what we don't have, but at the same time, we want to put a new facility, a new park that is a walk speed. You see, so that's the reason why for me, it's important to see where the people are in this. I have the same sentiment that Don. I will be denying right now if I don't say that the last year what I heard door after door after door is I don't want more taxes, So I will not be lying here and saying that this is going to be really popular and that putting this on the polling, I feel really confident that it's going to pass because I don't. So for me, the results are going to be really valuable to making a decision.
Any other questions or comments from council members?
Mr. President?
Yes. Ryan.
I just wanted to weigh in real quick on the costs and the timing. I think it was already said, but I don't think it can be overstated. There never is going to be a perfect time to do any of this, but I think there's a general agreement that these are all things, that we've had on our list that we need, and certainly we can't do all of it. I mean, even though this list is, I think, pretty good, at least at hitting at the core, we're never going to be able to do every project to make every single person happy. Otherwise, it would be I'm probably understating the cost as far as what it would be to do everything that we would want to do. But I think this is a pretty good start. I'm very interested to see what the polling says, because my fear is if we don't go to the voters now, and if the polling says let's not do it, it doesn't make sense, then by all means let's back out. But I'm afraid if we don't take our shot now, we could be talking, when you're talking about voter fatigue, it's not getting any easier in the years to come. I mean, I don't think that. And I'd be the first to say, certainly, being cognizant of the cost of housing and the impact on housing affordability right now, I think this is a modest proposal, all in all, something that I think that the voters could afford, I hope. But everyone else should vote their pocketbook when they look at it, and I'm happy we're giving the voters the opportunity to do that. Should we send it to the ballot? But yeah, first things first, I'd love to see the polling numbers along with everyone else.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Well, if we're going to do polling, I think we need to have the specific projects that are going to go and the specific cost that's going to be attributed to it.
It looked like
I mean,
Kelly was
it's
getting ready.
kinda like
It looks like
saying-
Kelly was getting ready to say something, but were you done, or were you gonna?
You're not going to listen anyway.
If I may, I mean, I remember the pool discussion, and Don and I both remember it well. And at the time, we went into great detail on the pool. We really wanted to rebuild Henry Moses. It took us years to get it done. I know that there was a lot of focus on if it was inside a building. We had enormous costs of maintaining that building, and a building over a pool is like the most expensive building to maintain because of all the humidity and the corrosion issues and everything. And so, and in addition, once you've put the pool in a building, there's an expectation by the public that it's going to be open year-round, but many people are, the masses, let's say, are not as interested in swimming in the winter. There's definitely people that are. There's no question about that, but it gets down to an economy of scale. Then it's hard to staff the building if you've just got 5 swimmers, and you start losing money on the operation side. And so when we did create the pool, I'm sure this is what Don's getting at, we actually created a pool that could operate in the black and could pay for itself operationally. I'm sure, and that wasn't done, it wasn't done in just 2 meetings. We spent a lot of time kind of hashing that out. So I just wanted to be fair to Don's concern about wanting clarity on that element. I wouldn't want to go to the voters and have it implied that the Henry Moses pool gets a covering with this ballot issue, and then us back off and say, no, we can't afford that. But I don't know if there's other issues, Don, that you'd like resolved first. I do understand that one, though, having been there with you when we were working on that.
Go ahead, Kelly.
If I could, you're absolutely right. The having a cover over the pool or enclosing it like you would see some of the other Ford Thrust type facilities or whatever, I don't think that was the intent in there. There was options just like all of the other 11 items that were picked in there, that here's what it could include potentially. Again, I would stress that it would be master planning through those processes, which is why we're looking at a potential bond issue, because we wouldn't be able to get those done in a 2 to 5 year period. We would need to master plan, bring it to council if that was something that you chose. And as Council President Prince noted as well, we would definitely, we want to be as transparent, completely transparent. So if council decided to fund, as you directed the CAC to do, up to the 70 million, or if you picked one of those projects, and the major maintenance projects, that obviously is at council discretion to do that. I know the CAC group spent a significant amount of time. Our parks are really beautiful, and we want to keep them that way, back to the regular major maintenance, taking care of what we have as well. And I know that the community they love using them, so just wanted to end with that you still have obviously that choice of what you want to put in the full project bid.
There's 43 major maintenance projects, correct?
Let me think, yes.
Okay.
And 11 potential.
Not geographically equitable.
If there's no other comments or questions, we are adjourned. We will reconvene as a full council at 7 o'clock.